All right, so if you look at the screen, you can see I have the cells underlined and acquire and use energy. So just as Danielle said, the reason why those are underlined is because that is where our true focus is for this piece of it. So if we think back to Monday's lesson, it was all about learning how organisms use energy, right? So we saw tarantulas hunting, we saw paramecium using their cilia to capture food, we saw cells specializing in trout, all sorts of different things that needed energy, right? But the common theme that we found along the whole time, no matter what organism you were looking at and how they were using energy, they all got their energy from what? The energy came from, what was that center column every single time? Say it if you know it. Food. You got it. So that food is directly related to the energy they were getting. So in our next lesson, over Tuesday and Wednesday, you guys either had the trout example or the butterfly example, depending on which group you were in, and you were looking at their life stages. And you saw that at certain life stages, there was food very available to them or not so available to them, depending on which stage of life they were in. So when you looked at the egg stage, was the food constantly available?
Oh, yes.
In the egg stage?
Yes.
Yes, it was constantly surrounding them, right? So that indicated to us yesterday that needed a lot of what? Energy, right. So anytime that food is surrounding, we know energy is being constantly supplied. But we also found out at different life stages where the food wasn't as plentiful, they didn't need as much energy as those times. Did they still need energy?
Yes.
Yes. But they didn't need quite as much as that point in their life where it was so crucial that they got all their energy needs. All right, so what we're going to do today is now we're focusing on this new term. So you've noticed that I erased out our old science vocab because those words have now kind of become part of our daily vocabulary in here, where we were always talking about unicellular, multicellular, prokaryote, eukaryote. So you guys know those words pretty well. We're starting a new vocab list, and it's going to start with our new word of cellular respiration. Okay, so it's the big fancy word of this piece of the unit. And we're going to come back to this and define it as the lesson goes on today. All right? So let's think about why we need energy. We were just saying it before and we learned it on Monday. No matter what we're doing, we need energy for what? Absolutely everything. Okay, so absolutely everything requires energy for our life functions, and we're going to get this energy from our food. You got it. Okay, so not just us, but all organisms are getting their energy from our food. So what system's responsible for breaking down our food? Who can raise their hand and tell us? So think back to our human differentiation lesson. We were finding out about what kinds of systems we have. We looked at the circulatory system, the respiratory, the nervous, the digestive system, all these different things. Which one is responsible for breaking down our food? That would be what, Mike?
Digestive system.
You got it. Digestive system. So whenever we go on to a new unit, you'll notice we're not just forgetting about all the other stuff we learned in earlier lessons. We keep tying them back in. So here's those specialized cells again, okay? So we have specialized stomach cells that help form tissues, right? They all join together for maybe something like our stomach lining. All those tissues come together, so the connective tissue, the nervous tissue, the epithelial tissue, all that stuff comes together to make up our organs, like our stomach and the small intestine, large intestine, all the stuff that's part of our digestive system, all right? Which all work together to help break down our food. So other organisms have different ways of getting food and breaking it down. So here, what did we find out about our organisms that we researched? Who could tell us some things? I'm just going to pause this first. So here's the idea behind it, right? So after you eat a meal, or any organism eats a meal, your body, okay, as well as the other organisms, change the carbohydrates that are in your food into glucose, a type of sugar. All right, so anytime you guys are eating carbohydrates or any of your foods, it's all being broken down into these simple sugars. How many of you guys have ever had kind of like a pasta night or something before a big sports team day that you're going to have a big game the next day? All right, why do you have to eat those things? Why do you think they eat those? Why do they say have a big pasta meal before the night of a big game? Steven?
They give you like nutrients and energy.
All right, energy is the big word there, right? So they want to make sure you've got plenty of energy for that game to sustain you. So carbohydrates happen to break down a little bit more quickly than some of your other types of foods like proteins and fats and that kind of stuff. So these carbohydrates, whenever you're eating them, get broken down into simple sugars that your body can use. So can someone give me an example of a carbohydrate that you might eat? What might be something that you have?
Oatmeal.
Oatmeal, what else? Rice, that's okay. Go ahead. What was it?
Bread.
Bread, okay.
Pasta.
Pastas.
Egg.
Eggs are actually a little more on the protein side. So all of those things can get broken down pretty quickly into usable sugars so that your body can have all the energy it needs for that game that you're going to. All right, so once it's broken into these sugars, we're talking about a process where your cells withdraw energy from the glucose. And this is where that big term comes in, respiration. All right, not to be confused with breathing. So yesterday, how many of you guys, did I say it yesterday in this class? I can't remember when I said when you think of the word respiration, what do we think of? And some of you said breathing, oxygen. Did we say that in this class? Yeah, okay. So a lot of you said breathing, oxygen, your lungs, your respiratory system, right? All involved in cellular respiration, but not exactly the same thing. So it requires oxygen, but not all organisms breathe like we do. So that's why we can't just say it has to do with lungs and that kind of stuff, because we're referring to all organisms using this energy. So let's see what cellular respiration actually is. Okay, this is what the definition. Process by which cells can break down simple food molecules to release the energy they contain. So that's a little wordy, okay? Let's see if we can just extract from that. What are the, I would say, I could do it in 5 words, the most important. So go ahead and talk it over with your partner. See if you can break it down into 5 words. All right, who thinks they got it? So what did your groups come up with? So Stephen, what did you guys say?
Break down food for energy.
You got it. Good job. How many of you guys use the word cells in there? Okay. The only reason why I took out the word cells was because it's in the word cellular respiration, so we know it's taking place in the cells. And that's why I also had cell underlined in our list of common things that all living things share, because we're talking about inside the cell. So cellular respiration, as we said, we're adding it to our vocab list now. All right, so the simple way of saying it is basically it's breaking down food for energy. And from now on, we're going to refer to food as what?
Energy.
Glucose, right. We know that food directly gives us energy, right? But now we're turning that into a little bit of a fancier term here, because all our food is essentially being broken down into glucose. So we're going to add glucose to our vocab list here as a simple sugar we get from our food. All right, so anytime we're talking about food in here now, you're going to say?
Glucose.
And if we're talking about breaking down food for energy, you're going to say?
Cellular respiration.
All right, good job. Yes, Zach?
So when I get lunch, you're going to say, I got a bunch of glucose. Could you say that?
You could say that. And you could say, and then I'm going to go through the process of?
Cellular respiration.
And then I'm going to have all sorts of?
Glucose.
No!
Energy.
Energy, good. All right, so let's do a little activity to help us understand this. Okay, so if we look at the equation, you're going to see this a lot next year. You guys are going to be doing chemistry a lot. So you're going to see equations over and over again next year. I wrote it for you in all the fancy letters and numbers up here, but then I also put it in words underneath. So if you look here and you see C6H12O6, that's the fancy way of saying which thing?
Glucose.
Glucose, which comes from the food the organism eats. Okay? Plus O2, which is Oxygen, which comes from the air or the water surrounding the organism. So if we're talking about a fish getting the oxygen from the water, or us getting the oxygen from the air, right? Depending on what organism, they're going to get it from their environment. Equals CO2, which is carbon dioxide, plus water, plus, look at the back easel after we did this activity. To start this activity that you just did when you were dancing all around, you needed glucose and oxygen, right? So those starting materials match what's up here in the equation to start cellular respiration. The products that come out of it on the other side of the equal sign match what we have on the back. This is how we felt after. Breathing heavily out, carbon dioxide, here it is. Sweating, here's the water as a waste product. And we felt energized by the end. So we have taken our food or our glucose, broken it down through this process, cellular respiration, into the very much needed energy to do all of our life functions. Okay? So no matter what organism we're talking about, whether it's an amoeba, a paramecium, E. coli, a worm, a sea star, a human being, aloe vera, a morel truffle, doesn't matter which organism we're talking about, since all living things need a continuous supply of energy for absolutely everything that they do, the cells of all living things carry out respiration continuously. So this process is constantly happening in all organisms.